Greetings everyone. My name is Dr. Sriram Rajagopalan. I am the Global Head for Agile Strategy, Transformation and Training Services at Inflectra. In this video, I will demonstrate how Spira supports a mixed systems integration engagement. That is, combining adaptive approaches for agile software development and predictive approaches like V-model to hardware development within a single product. First, let's go ahead and set up a new product. I'm on the cloud instance of my Spira instance. I'm going to the system admin section, view edit products, and let's go ahead and add a product. Let's give it a name. Remote cardiac monitoring system. I'm going to also add some description that I have typed up real quickly. And I'm going to use one of the existing system of systems code template. And that's it for now. So now I have created a product. Let's go ahead and set up a couple of releases. Let's set a parent release, major release. And let's give some dates. I'm going to make it go for a little longer. And now within that, I have to set up a couple of different types of releases. Let's go ahead and set up a new child release for this. And this will be hardware release. And within this, I'm going to set up some small phases which are going to be for the hardware process. So concept phase, and I'm going to call this a phase. Build phase. Let's use this as a phase. So for the sake of simplicity, that's good enough. Let's also go ahead and give it different dates here. So let's maybe start this from January 20th to February 20th. That's fine. And let's start this from February 23rd to March 20th. Okay. Now let's go ahead and create the software releases. So let's go ahead and create a new release. Here, software release. And this can run in parallel. So I'm going to leave them as such. And let's save that. Now within that, I'm going to create the sprints. So child sprints. Iteration 1. And let's start this from January 20th till maybe February 6th for the sake of simplicity here. And iteration 2, let's start this from February 9th, got that ends on February 6th. And then let's go for 2 more weeks and save it. So now we have created 2 different groups of releases, one for the hardware, which has the phases, and the other one has the iterations, which is called the sprints. And most often it is important for us to label the hardware related releases that connects with your particular industry. Let's go ahead and create a few requirements here. For now, I'm going to create one requirement, system requirements. And let's create hardware requirements. That's good enough for now. And within that, this system is going to be software system requirements. So let's go ahead and create a few child requirements here. So as a clinician, I want to view the ECG events so that I can quickly identify cardiac abnormalities. Okay, so I've done this right now. That's good enough now. So let me create maybe one more requirement here as a compliance officer. I want all ECG to be annotated for audit review so that regulatory compliance can be met. That's good enough for me. So I've written those two requirements at this point. So now I want to go ahead and create some hardware specific requirements. So let's go here, create a child requirement. Here, the system shall acquire ECG signals with a minimum sampling rate and accuracy and an accuracy of plus or minus 1%. Okay, I've written one requirement here. Let's maybe write another one. The system shall notify the patient and physician simultaneously if any aberration is noted. Okay, I've written a couple of quick requirements at this particular point. So at this point, what we have done is created a new product, created releases, grouped the releases for software and hardware elements, created a few requirements at this particular point. So now let's go ahead and assign these to the appropriate releases. So let's say, select the system requirement, and I'm going to go inside this and select this to the top software release at this particular point. Okay, and let's do the same thing for the rest of them also. This is simulating the product backlog that would be existing at one level, but because we are having the backlog representing both system and hardware components, system, software and hardware components, we are doing this here. Good. Now let's do the same thing for the other one. Here we are going to come and say this is hardware, and for now I'm going to come and say this is going to be concept for now, and this is going to be concept for now as well. This is typically the case when it comes to the predictive approaches. People move from one phase to another phase as the entire requirement. So I'm starting with the actual concept release at this particular point. Now, let's go ahead and look at the planning board. This is very specific only for Agile or system requirements. So if I go inside and select my sprint backlog and select my software release, these are the things that are currently appearing as planned, right? Now I can also come and say, instead of by status, by sprint. So all these things are appearing here. So maybe I can come and say, I want this to move to iteration 1. That's the most important thing. And then this is in the software backlog. But we can also come back and say, this is going to be appearing in the following sprint. So now you are able to come and say how my backlog is getting structured into different kinds of releases and stuff like that. So let's go and take a look at one of those requirements at this particular point. For now, I'm going to go inside the software requirements. So if I go inside my software requirements, you will see some information about points. Now I want to call out the point details over here. Story points are an agile planning construct. So most often agile approaches use story points. However, in predictive modeling, such detailed planning may not be available early on. So the story points can be somewhat seen as an extension of a rough order of magnitude ROM estimate that can further be refined using tasks. Now, even in Agile, it is possible for us to come and say a story that has a larger story point can be broken into multiple smaller stories with smaller story points. So splitting of a large user story into smaller user stories is definitely possible even in Agile approaches. So we have this estimate in points already available. Now, if you look here, there is 8 that is noted here. So it's approximately indicating 8 hours of work is required for this. Now, where is this information coming from? Let's go to the planning options under the product settings. If I go there, you will see here that plan using points is not turned on, which is what normally we recommend using for SI engagement that has both agile and non-agile approaches. So default estimate is 1 point, so automatically it gave the 1 point that I gave. The point effort is approximately 8 hours. So typically in an agile approach, you don't try to convert this into an hours equivalent, but the tasks are always estimated in hours. But because we are combining both of them here, this logic still applies. So you use the hours at this point for non-agile approaches, and for agile approaches, you use the points. So the points are still available for you, and the hours conversion is also available for you. Now, if I come and say plan using points is turned on, and I save this, if I go inside my requirements and look at that same requirement, you will not see that hours element here for the requirements, because Agile uses only points and they don't convert the points into an hours equivalent at the requirement level. But we are planning to use the same requirement for both adaptive and non-adaptive approaches here. So I recommend that you turn this off. So let's turn this off and save it here at this point. So if I go inside and look at the requirements, it comes back with this information. So if I go and say this is a larger effort and it is approximately 2 days of effort, then you can come and say there are some values that I need to fill. So let's fill this, and it automatically converts this 2 days of effort to be 16 hours. So you can also adjust the hours equivalent in the planning options, as I mentioned as well. It's very important also to keep in mind that the story points do not decay, and actually the days do not decay as well. The story point is just a metric, system level metric, and so they are not required for requirement completion, traceability, test case coverage, or even regulatory compliance. So now let's go ahead and create a couple of test cases and tasks and stuff like that. So let's go ahead and create a test case here. For now, I'm going to use one of this existing test case creation option here. So I have created one particular test case here. That's good enough. And I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing here as well. Create another test case here. So that's created as well. So let's go to the first one, create maybe 1 or 2 tasks over here. So this task is capture ECG event in the presence of noise that is required. And let's save this, save a new, maybe add one more thing, process ECG events through signal to noise ratio filter. Okay, so I've created something here. That's good. So now you can also come and say show hide columns and show additional efforts. In this particular case, I'm going to come and say show the estimated efforts. Let's go ahead and fill this information here itself. Let's say 2 hours, and this takes 4 hours. Okay, so I've added this. You could easily go back and look into the actual details here itself and add more information here. But in this particular case, I'm just going to go with the flow here. Now, you can come and follow the actual workflow that is applicable for your individual products here. But let me go here to the requirements and show how the software system actually shows here. So you can scroll over to the first one, says that, there is one test case available and there is one test case available here. And you can see that there are 2 tasks available here on the first one and no tasks are available here. So these things are all an indication of how your project is going on. And you can do the same thing for these elements as well. So let's go ahead and do this hardware related one also. Let's create one test case for this. Yeah, that's good enough. And let's go ahead and create another test case for this particular one. Done. And then let's go to this one and create maybe a task over here. Patient preferences for notification are predetermined. Okay, so I basically said something needs to be predetermined, and that takes about 1 hour of work. And so something here I have done here. So let's go ahead and show how this works in the actual product dashboard. Now, for instance, in the product dashboard, you can see that there are a few requirements that are here. And this says 6 primarily because we have 2 grouping. Also, we have 4 requirements plus a grouping as well. So it's showing that info and where the details are, and all the information is showing up right over here at this point. Let's go ahead and simulate some example of how things are moving forward. So let's go to the test cases here. And in this case, I know this is going to be a software requirement. So I'm going to go ahead and follow through this process and say, okay, review test case, done, ready for review, approve test case, done. So these are all pre-existing workflow that I have done here. Now I'm going to go ahead and say this is in an approved state. I'm going to execute this and pause this. So this is for this release, and it's good enough. And I'm going to come back and say this is passed, looks good. And I'm going to mark this complete. And let's do the same thing for the other one, which is the hardware requirement now. So let's go through this hardware requirement and do the same thing. I'm not going to go through the workflow here, but I'm going to go ahead and execute this real quick. Select the build phase here. Work as expected. Pause this, done, and that's done. Now let's take a look at the other one, and for the sake of fun here, let's go ahead and fail. Okay, so this is also in the build phase. Next, fail. The ECG sampling rate was too high. Okay. I marked this and I have failed this, and I'm done. So now if you go inside, we have 2 test cases that are passed, one for the software, one for the hardware, one failed. For the hardware, one did not run for the software. So if you look inside my product dashboard, the product dashboard will start capturing this information here. These details are really showing up over here, and I can go inside and start looking at additional details here in terms of the requirement coverage, the test execution status, and stuff like that. So this is a simple example of how you are able to actually show both the hardware and software specific requirements within the same product. If you go ahead and click on this reporting at this particular point and run the requirements traceability report here, which is one of the standard reports that I have. And run this for now. You will be able to see all my requirements traceability that's coming up right now here, in addition to things that I have actually shown here. So all this information is pretty much rolled up and captured as well. This brings us close to how you are able to consolidate both the system and hardware requirements in an SI engagement for a specific product within Spira.